Welcome to this episode. My guest today is Joe Banach. He is the Director of Sales and Marketing with Next Step Robotics. He's a physical therapist that transitioned his career into helping rehabilitation clinics adopt robotics as a form of therapy for their ongoing patient care. Thanks for being on the show, Joe, and I can't wait to hear what you got going on over at Next Step. So just give us a little bit of a background on your journey and how you got to where you're at right now.
Yeah, it's a little more unique in terms of the sales and marketing aspect, like how I arrived here. But it all started really, if I kind of rewind to after high school, actually, is I lost a decent amount of weight after high school. And that changed me from lazy and not driven to very driven and wanting to have that same life change and everybody else, kind of pass that on to other people. So that led to me becoming a personal trainer. And that slowly led me to wanting to make more of a difference, which led me to be a physical therapist, or I believe in Canada, it's physiotherapist.
Physiotherapist, that's right. Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So physiotherapist. And then we were talking before this aired, COVID changed everything in a lot of ways, but COVID in our industry, at my specific hospital I was at, they were not supporting telehealth. And so it was basically get furloughed or find something else. And I always saw physical therapy, especially personal training, but even physical therapy as well, as a sales process still. In that I'm selling myself to these patients. They need to trust me, and I need to sell them for them to do the stuff at home that I'm telling them to do as well. So I always liked that. I was working in athletics, and I was working with high level athletes, but I wasn't the best therapist there yet, but I was still getting to work with a lot of the higher profile ones, not because I was the best, but I think I was able to form good relationships. So I carried that forward to sales, and I've been in the medical device space for about 5 years now.
Yeah, it's interesting. Well, you kind of answered one of my questions, was how you went from being a direct patient care person to actually working in the sales side of things. And I mean, you sales is a trust event, right? Like it's building that trust with people anyway. So you kind of develop the skill of helping people with their physical pain points and then transitioning that to actually being more centered. So tell me about where you're at now, because you've got some interesting things happening over at Next Step.
Yeah, I'm with Next Step Robotics now. I'm the Director of Sales and Marketing, since we're a startup company. So everybody has their hand in everything in that situation. But it's really cool in that rehab. So we're in the rehab space, especially after somebody has a stroke, brain injury, spinal cord injury. Traditionally, robotics in rehab has kind of taken a patient for a walk, almost taken them for a ride.
Right.
Our robotic, the patient contributes to the movement as much as possible, and the robotic bridges the gap the rest of the way. So it's a really cool thing because we have such great research behind it. And now the issue with it is, the reason why marketing and sales is needed is we need to educate the market on what kind of robotics really make a huge difference in these patients' lives.
Yeah, and maybe explain how this robotic actually works, because when I was listening to some of the testimonials and looking at how it operates, you actually, and it's called AMBL, right? That's the name of the
correct.
product. Yeah.
Yep.
So and it's used in-house. So people come in, they use the robotics in-house during their therapy sessions, right?
That's correct. So let's say they're in for physio or physical therapy. They really see in the studies that they need about 9 hours total with our robotic to make the massive difference that we find in the research.
Right.
So that could be 18 half-hour sessions. It could be 9 one-hour sessions, whatever the patient's able to make work. Because it makes such a difference, we don't have to send this home with the patient. Like you said, they're just using it in-house, and then hopefully they're having more autonomy and independence at home.
And how is this different than what their treatment previously was? What's the difference between the two?
Yeah, so physical and occupational therapists are the workhorses, to making sure people get the recovery that's needed. if you're throwing technology into the mix, it's a great way to supplement that high intensity or high, everyone's used to hearing dose with pharmacologic or medicine, but we look at it in physical therapy as getting the dose, AKA how much movement are they doing? So sometimes technology or robotics can help deliver a higher dose as long as the patient has that ability. So currently some technologies have been a replacement though. So they're a replacement, maybe doing less dosage, maybe not doing as much for the patient as we thought they would maybe 10 or 20 years ago when these technologies came out. Whereas we believe that the shift in this space is indicating robotics should purely be a supplement. It should help you get more dosage and tax the therapists or tax their bodies less than if they were having to move the patient's limb themselves.
Right. And then you use the word neuro in there as well. So you're obviously trying to teach the brain to operate with or without this device, right? Is that
right? Exactly. Yeah. So there's a term called plasticity, and that basically what you said with neuro is it's basically rewiring the brain.
Right.
So with technologies, if they're replacing the movement or if the technology is doing the movement for the patient, you don't really learn anything. The brain isn't learning a new movement, so it can't reinforce it.
Right.
Whereas if it's just supplementing or aiding the patient, then they're creating those new pathways and rewiring the brain to make some change.
And I think I caught the gist that you're actually following that cognitive connection, right? As part of this therapy?
In terms of like trying to treat the cognitive aspect?
No, like that there is a relationship between what they're thinking and what they're doing.
Oh, exactly. Yeah. So really to relate to your question is if they're not only their muscles doing it, but then like you said, they're actively contributing their own effort mentally. Right. And they're almost gamifying it themselves. They're trying to, they can see on our software, okay, the robot helped me this much last session. I want it to help me less this time. So they're actively adding that cognitive component, like you said.
It's interesting because then now you're talking about more data-driven results, right? You're actually saying, hey, so here, this actually works. So here's the proof, and probably reinforces for them that, oh, I'm making progress. Because
yes.
Do you find that with patients in this kind of therapy that they struggle with that? Is that they just don't? I mean, it's a hit, when mm-hmm. health issues hit us, it's a hit to our confidence and our self-esteem. And how are we gonna come out of this? And depending on the individual, so this must be a real game changer for that. Reinstilling more confidence and positive thinking that, oh, this is actually going to work.
For sure. And like our software actually shows them step by step how much the robot is doing, how much they're doing. So it's a really nice way to reinforce whatever is positive that they're doing. If a clinic though doesn't have any technology, the therapist can still use gamification. They can write stuff down on Post-it notes or whatever, just tell them verbally to show them how much they did better. But to your original question, like that, it's so important to address their lack of confidence. And what the research really shows, any positive reinforcement, they call it gamification now, but any metrics, any data we can give them is really huge. So that's how we weave that into our solution, and that the data is calculated automatically so the therapist can have that data and share it with the patient right away.
That's great. And then that data is also very valuable for other purposes too, validating the product to investors, for example, or to other growth expansion for the company too, right? That's interesting.
For sure. I mean, some of the investor meetings we've been on, we're still very early, like just about to enter Series A, basically.
Oh, wow. So how many years has that been then?
Well, there's a lot of personal challenges, or not challenges, but things that were going on in the personal lives of our founders. Like after we first got NIH funding. So after doing some more clinical studies, really the product itself really launched in September of 24.
Oh, wow. Oh, that's
Yeah.
right.
So yes, very recent. So we've um, been getting to a lot of clinics, really spreading the word. And then when you mentioned the investors, some of the investors, when they see, especially if they have a medical background, when they see some of our before after images of
Wow.
people walking before, it's like they think it's science fiction, you know? So yes,
right?
to your point, it has been helping with spreading the word and momentum with investors as well.
Amazing. Tell me a little bit about how when you came on board, and you had to when did you come on board? Last year sometime?
July. So yeah. Just a couple months before.
So you're coming in, you're getting to know this this device and what it's going to do. When you're kind of putting together your sales and marketing strategy, how did you approach that? How did you how did you do that?
Yeah, it was a lot of brainstorming that went into it, and anybody else in your audience that listens to this, I'd love to hear any feedback actually. In that, I tried to approach it as, even though we were very new, I want to approach it still that I wanted to create the foundation to get inbound leads whatever way we could, even though I knew that was going to be very rare. We're in a niche space already, but then we're brand new also. So it's a challenge, but that was my main purpose, was create content, create a story. So we're adding value to anybody who sees anything about our company so that we can start getting some inbound contacts, all at the same time as me using all my past contacts in the space and just doing all the traditional sales stuff of just outbound, just a lot of cold and warm outreach.
Right. And when you got there, I mean, what did you see were the biggest challenges that were for the company at that point? What, I mean, besides being a startup and being new, but were there other challenges that you had to overcome when you first got there?
Yeah, just in terms of like what we talked about a little earlier in our chat, is educating the market. I feel like that's always tough, but especially in the space of robotics, like our whole mission was to create actual impact, but make it affordable for clinics.
Right.
So because of that, like we didn't want to make this the sexiest robot, maybe, quote unquote, and make it as expensive as maybe some others. We kept that cost down for us and for the customer, but educating the customer on why it looks like maybe a bit clunky, like, so a lot of devices in the past have truthfully been used for marketing for hospitals sometimes as well. Mm-hmm. So trying to educate them and get past some of those barriers that, hey, this is truly for outcomes. If we're truly looking at improved outcomes and making a difference in the patient lives or the end users' lives, this is the type of technology we should be looking at. The biggest challenge was really just getting past those traditional things that were in our market of using devices as a marketing tool, as opposed to truly focusing on the outcomes for the patient.
Right. Giving them true value. Yeah.
Right.
So your end buyer is who then? Who's buying the product in the end?
Yeah, physical therapy departments, most specifically a word you mentioned earlier, neurophysical therapy department. So very niche. So it tends to be clinics that treat a high volume of people recovering from a stroke. Right.
And so far, your feedback's been good with the ones that are using it now. Yeah.
Yeah, it is. It's been fun. The nice thing, one of the really interesting things of why I joined Next Step Robotics, is they already did so much market research before launching and designing our current version of the robotics. They talked to over 200 therapists.
Oh, wow.
So the setup time was already what therapists look for.
Right.
And they already had a lot of the things that streamlined it for the physical therapy daily flow. So yeah, so far so good. The other thing that relates to challenge you asked about earlier is our sales cycle is usually 9 to 12 months.
Oh, wow.
So we have some partners already, but it'll really accelerate once we actually get past the full sales cycle.
Yeah, no kidding. Yeah, 9 to 12, it's big. Well, I guess it's just justifying the fact that they probably already have invested in some sort of equipment by this point.
Right.
But so it's understanding how that will impact them moving forward. And so, one of my other questions was, you talked about how they've already kind of addressed some of the challenges, like what you're talking about as far as growth goes.
Mm-hmm.
But I wanted to ask you about, there are things in the industry, in the space already, that have been created and like you said,
Yeah.
have been used mostly for marketing and purposes, and not so much for patient outcome. So tell me a little bit more about that. About what is your competition like? Is it pretty steep? I mean, the whole health tech industry is like exploding. So
Yeah.
tell me about how the struggles around that.
Yeah, when you mentioned the health tech is exploding, we really compete with everybody in the rehab space. So that's what makes it difficult is we have some direct competitors that treat the same diagnosis or deficits in a patient, but we're really competing with virtual reality companies as well, or
Right,
companies that create harnesses for people to walk in, because it all comes from the same budget.
right,
So we have, our direct competitors are places that also target foot drop or other deficits after a stroke. But like I said, we might lose on an opportunity in this space because they needed 3 new treatment tables as
right,
well. So
right.
it's we're kind of competing for everything in the rehab space.
The same dollars coming off the
Mhm.
same budget line, right? Yeah.
Right, exactly.
It's so is that one of your biggest challenges you see in growth moving forward, or do you have other challenges that you're sort of facing?
It's a good question. I think that's the biggest challenge in initial growth. Long-term growth is the biggest challenges for us. I guess that relates to the first part too, is we just need to get enough growth in the first part for the bigger rehab, not necessarily chains, but national rehab companies to trust us, like
Right,
to invest in us, because the space is so difficult, and we can go into why it's difficult, but so many companies have gone out of business in the last few years.
right,
So their
right.
national companies are hesitant to invest in
Hesitant,
somebody like us
little
because they're
fear
like,
in there for that. Yeah,
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 they're nervous they're going to get their therapists all excited to use it, and then we're out of business.
right,
So
right.
yeah, we just need as much early success as possible so we can build on that and build our trust in the marketplace.
I mean, because ongoing, I mean, a person invests in one of these devices and starts implementing them. It's not like it's oh, here you go, here's the keys, and yeah, and
Yeah,
you don't see them again for 5 years. There's probably ongoing maintenance, upkeep, software support, enhancements, things like that. So
absolutely.
how is the company addressing that as part of your growth plan?
Yeah, with my background in therapy, and then really all of our 4 founders are involved. They come out of rehab or rehab research. So that was very sensitive to us on creating like an education plan for them. So that doesn't necessarily address some of your question on how we're planning to address all those issues, but the main thing is with education, in that we're approved for CEUs for the irregular training as well as the advanced training. So we plan to just be actual partners with these clinics, and that we're always customizing their training needs, uh,
Right.
month by month, quarter by quarter, whatever they need.
What's a CEU?
Oh, sorry. Yeah. So that's a continuing education credit.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, like nurses, physical
Okay.
therapists, and anybody, they need a certain amount of hours every 2 years usually to keep
Right.
their license.
Okay.
So,
Gotcha. It's
yeah,
ongoing. Okay. Yeah. I called probably called this something else in Canada, but
probably.
good
Yeah.
for
Yeah. That's
me to
all.
know those kind of acronyms.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So if you can, like, if they're already investing in you, and then you can at least give them some,
For sure.
obviously you're giving them the outcomes and a nice
Right.
technology, but if you can give them something that the therapists usually have to pay for out of their own pocket, then that tends to be appreciated.
Yeah. Absolutely. What else is reshaping the rehab clinic space? So there are other things that I mean, there's lots of things you're competing with. Like you said, they're coming,
Mm-hmm.
from things that they've only got so much money to spend on certain things. So are there other things out there that are forefront, or do you think because this is very patient focused and has and you can validate outcome, and you can
Mm-hmm.
prove to patients and investors and anybody else, buyers, that there is data behind this and it shows it. Do you think that's enough to overcome what else is going on in the space?
I think what you mentioned in the first part of the question is definitely still going to be a barrier, in that one of the biggest external threats to our market is physical therapists, at least as of the last 2 years, have the highest turnover out of
Oh,
any
wow.
phase in healthcare. So I think they doubled the nursing turnover last year.
Really?
So because of that, some therapy departments, they don't want to invest in technology. They want to invest in staff retention, which is very understandable.
Sure.
So that's probably the biggest threat, in that sometimes we'll go to a facility and be like, hey, we believe in your outcomes. We believe in what you're saying, but we have to focus on just delivering therapy at all. We need bodies in here, and we need to have the ability to actually deliver the therapy. So
Yeah.
maybe we can talk again in a couple of years,
Yeah, well, for sure. Yeah, I'd like to see where this goes.
Yeah.
I mean, because you are really balancing sort of this world of technology, and there's so much going on and so much distraction, but at the same time, you're very patient focused,
Mm-hmm.
which I think from a patient perspective, the demand on their end would probably be quite high to say, oh, I really want to use this. I really want to be able to have access to this device. So I think that's pretty interesting.
Yeah, it's interesting you bring that up, because when we talked about inbound leads earlier,
Mm-hmm.
I maybe am getting 3 to 5 inbound leads from clinics a month, but it's probably close to 15 patients a month.
Wow.
Which is tough though, because we're not able to actually offer it to them in the home. Yes, right. Exactly. Yeah.
But I mean, if they're actually seeing it and going to their physiotherapist and saying,
Mm-hmm.
or therapist and saying, I saw this product, I want this, maybe there's an outlet and a way to drive it from that direction too, right? It's
exactly.
like the drug ads where they say, talk to your doctor about Ozempic, right, or whatever it is. It's like you're getting the end buyer to actually go and ask for this product or this device and saying, I want this. That really
Mm-hmm.
does validate the potential for that therapist to then use that.
Yeah. Oh yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, we talk about, especially in like SaaS sales and things like that, like creating that champion and creating that advocate for you towards the end of the process. But yeah, in ours, if we can create that champion on the front end, it tends to be pretty helpful.
Well, that's a good segue too, because I wanted to ask you what kind of sales avenues have you approached, and what's working best for you?
So with my background in physical therapy, sales seemed, even though I always thought of it in sales, it still was very intimidating when I truly entered sales. Mm-hmm. But I was very comforted once I started following people, especially like affiliated with HubSpot and Gong, when you could see how much data was in a lot of sales. And so that made me comfortable, because I've been analyzing data on how to treat patients. So now I just carried that forward to sales. So SaaS sales are probably the folks I've learned the most from. Specifically, I would consider like anything Mark Roberge writes is something that I tend to kind of use as a guidebook for the way I sell. So, yeah, I guess the biggest thing was just when I first started, you kind of saw a lot of sales, especially in devices, is just, popping into the office, just talking to the front desk people, trying to befriend them, whether it was genuine or not. And I just wasn't comfortable with that. So I wanted to implement a true sales process. And so it's always been about that regular flow of going from prospecting to discovery to see if us in a clinic are good partners for each other.
Right.
And then go to the demo and then take it from there.
Right. And then you rolled out a podcast called Synapse.
I did.
Yeah, which is really good. I've listened to a couple of episodes actually. It's awesome. So
I appreciate that. Yeah.
I was like, oh well, Joe knows what he's doing, so it's not going to be a
Oh, I definitely do not. No, it's thank heavens for technology. for sure. It does it does most
It's,
of it.
well, it's, I mean, a lot of it has to do with who you're talking to, and you've got you have really good guests. You took that on, and you've done how many episodes?
19 now.
Have you seen results now? I mean, 19 episodes, that's substantial, but is that showing or indicating? I think it's a long game, but
yeah, definitely. Yeah, definitely a long game. A lot of it too, just to be candid about it, half of it was because as a physical therapist, I didn't want to get too rusty with my clinical knowledge. So
right,
that was half of the
right.
purpose behind
Well,
the
that's good.
podcast.
Yeah, there's the motivation there, right? Yeah.
For sure. Yeah,
Yeah.
absolutely. And then really the rest of it was like what you mentioned with the long game is to provide value to the customers however
Right.
I could. So it's trying to spread whatever's the newest thing in research to them. And also it's been really helpful to have customers talking to each other. Even though it's not really about the product I'm working with, it's about maybe some research they talked about on the podcast. But that's been really helpful, just really to help with, not that it was my intention for them to trust me more because of that, but it has helped with them gaining trust in me and what I'm selling,
Right.
and just creating a community around it.
Right. And that said, what are your channels? Like, how are you actually what are you using to mostly market your product and the device?
Yeah, mostly all social media for
Yeah.
the most part, and then a lot of warm and cold email outreach. Cold calls are definitely still a thing, but
Yeah.
it's mostly socials, trying to tell the story with visuals.
Yeah, I mean, content creation, I don't know for you, but content creation is always a challenge it's the biggest challenge for most people.
For sure.
You have lots of opportunity as you have your website up now, you've got lots of opportunity to show cool things. You got science, you got data. So you don't feel like you're short on content, do you?
I do not. No, it's definitely gonna be fun when we get past that first sales cycle and we have dozens of partners and then we have dozens of patient testimonials to follow, because we really want to highlight what's important with the patient improvements. And right now, we have dozens and dozens of patients that came out of our clinical trials, but that was before we really truly knew that this was going to go to market. It was really just a research robot. So now some of those patients are gone. Like their story was never told,
Oh,
unfortunately.
Yeah.
So
yeah, those case studies and testimonials will be really valuable for you guys.
For
Yeah.
sure.
I watched Vivian's. That was pretty good.
Oh yeah,
she was pretty excited just to wear a normal pair of shoes, she said.
yeah.
That was
yeah,
cool.
I love the attitude she had as she said it too. Yeah.
And so metrics for you, tell me about metrics. What's most important for you when you're looking at the socials and your content? What are you measuring? How are you measuring your value there?
Probably new traffic to the website, like actually getting a click-through rate from whether it's a social post or an email marketing to our website.
Right.
So that's what's been most reliable to actually show that it's having an impact, much more so than like reactions on any of the posts.
And then call to action wise, is it really, it's really, filling out the form and sending it in, and then someone follows up with that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. It could be just a contact form, or they can sign up for a virtual discovery call or demo right from the website.
Right.
So that's the main call to action. I guess the biggest struggle I still have with marketing and with content creation is how often you put that ask in there. I know a lot of people feel differently about what I'm about to say, but I tend to like a lot of the stuff Alex Hormozy does and puts together on that. And he's always about keep providing content until somebody asks you for anything else.
Right.
And I like that philosophy, but it's tough. You need to survive as a company.
Absolutely.
Too.
Yeah.
So that's a hard thing to juggle.
Yeah, absolutely. And being a startup too makes it, you're kind of in a tight spot. You kind of got to fit in there somewhere and make it work, until you hit that point where it's like, okay, now you can spend more money on, on paid advertising and things like that. Yeah.
For sure.
Yeah. If you could solve one thing tomorrow, overcome one challenge in the business, what would it be?
it's so hard for us to get to the right contact like efficiently. So I know there's a lot of software out there that tries to solve that, but lead generation software that can actually get you to that rehab technology decision maker it would cut out endless time for
Right.
us. So lead gen software has definitely helped, but sometimes I'm still going through 5 to 10 contacts to get to that right person.
Yeah, it's an old ratio, right? That
Yeah,
whole 5%, the magic number kind of thing. It never
for
seems
sure.
to go away. I don't know what it is, but someone's got to crack that code one of these days.
Absolutely.
Maybe it'll be Bullseye.
Yeah, that'd be sweet.
We'll see.
Yeah.
I'll let you know if they do.
Yes,
If
and
they
keep
do.
it affordable for us startups. That'd be the second problem with that. Yeah.
Anything else you want to talk about around Next Step Robotics or the AMBL product? Is there something that we haven't really covered that do you want to mention?
No, I appreciate you highlighting us a little bit. Not that I necessarily expected it, but I guess I would just like to point out that we'll create a robotic for the arm that'll be
Oh,
released
wow.
most likely next year.
Right. Wow.
So yeah, and then there'll be a gait monitoring device as well. So
Right.
some clinics have like tens of $1,000 devices to measure how people walk,
Right.
but this is going to be a much cheaper version of giving you the same data. So that's all stuff that's on the horizon for us.
Wow. That's pretty exciting. So you're not stopping. There's new products coming out
No,
already.
absolutely. I didn't know if you wanted to, the only thing I was thinking of is just because I enjoy this nerdy aspect of sales is I think conversational intelligence has any of those kind of applications have totally changed sales and sales coaching. I think that's been an excellent addition.
Okay, explain that a little bit for me. Conversational intelligence. How do you define
Yeah,
that?
so conversational intelligence apps are part of a tech stack that can do that. I guess the easiest way to describe it is just recording the calls,
Right.
creating transcripts, but then the next step from there is how you can actually use that in the sales process and in the sales coaching process for any of your direct reports as well. So if you're using it in the sales process, I love it because you can actually chop up some of the videos from your discovery call, chop up some clips, and then you can, when you're confirming your value later in the sales process with them, you can show them what you talked about in the discovery call,
Right.
or even put a call to action on those videos. And then the sales coaching aspect has been awesome, just to be able to go through calls with people and go over what what the AI thought they did well and what they did
Right.
wrong, and then kind of
Right.
analyzing that together.
So you're leveraging AI as in that sense.
Yes,
Are you
for sure.
leveraging it in any other way?
I definitely, I can obsess over, especially when you mention content creation, I can obsess over every little detail. So I love AI for editing and stuff
Yeah.
like that, like just refinement
Yeah.
of my messaging and content overall. So
It's
yeah,
very helpful. Yeah.
yes,
Yeah.
absolutely.
It's very
Yeah.
helpful. Any particular product you're using that you like?
We use Gemini for a lot of the like basic day-to-day messaging. Canva has really nice AI components now for
really good.
actually creating the content. Yeah. So that's been cool. And then the conversational intelligence we use is I guess they're a little bit of an older company than us, but still a startup. They are called Clap. I believe they're originally out of France, actually. But
Oh, really?
that's been
Haven't
an
heard of
awesome
them.
addition.
Oh, interesting. Okay, that's
Yeah.
good. There's some nuggets in there for sure.
Yeah.
So I mean, looking ahead, future of healthcare, there's lots going on. Do you see any other major disruption in your area in the near future here besides the arm that you're in the middle of creating?
No, that's really the main thing is just will we get stability in rehab? Like
Yeah.
for the actual market. Can we stop the turnover in rehab
Right.
and kind of so that's really one of my hopes with technology like this is that it increases job satisfaction because they see better outcomes with their patients.
Right. Right. So I do assign that to burnout. Is that part of it? Is it just it's just such a hard there's so much happening.
Yeah.
It's just burnout that's taking them out of the game?
Yeah, a lot of burnout, and what contributes to that is just such a high amount of documentation time mixed with insurance not allowing nearly as many visits as they used to. So
Oh,
I
really?
feel like you're going through all that while at the same time not seeing as many improvements in your patients. So
Right.
I know I battled with that as a physio. It's like it's hard to see your purpose as much
Right.
as you may have a
And
decade or more
patients
ago.
patients struggle with doing the exercises too, right? I mean,
For sure.
and then that's
Yeah.
what I've heard from a lot of therapists is that it's getting patients to actually do the stretching, do the homework, and come back and making progress. It's a smaller percentage of people who are really really into their recovery plan, and but others need a little bit more support, a little more encouragement. So, yeah,
Absolutely.
reducing those number of visits would probably really impact that for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Awesome. Well, I can't thank you enough for taking time out to sit here with me. I know you've got to get to another meeting, so I just want
Thank
to
you.
thank you for being with me today and sharing a little bit of your world and where you've come from and what you're doing at Next Step Robotics. It sounds like really cool stuff. So I'll get you back on here again. And I want to
Yeah,
hear more.
please.
Maybe we'll talk about the arm when it comes out, and so we'll stay in touch and
Yeah, I
maybe
appreciate you, and keep I love to just keep staying in tune with your podcast, because I my favorite thing about this field is how much you can continue to learn from everybody else, and especially even in little other industries. So I'm
yeah.
excited to follow you.
Thanks. I'm really excited about the guest lineup. We've kind of got sort of some of it nailed down, but I'm looking forward to it. It's quite diverse, but I think it's
Hmm.
interesting to kind of be in a position to help a variety of businesses and individuals in the healthcare, health tech space with a lot of good feedback, good information like yourself.
Mm.
Um, one last thing. Do you got a book recommendation for us out there?
Oh man, my favorite, like I told you, I love Mark Roberge. So the sales acceleration formula. I know it tends to be very macro, but I think it can help anybody in sales and marketing, really.
Yeah.
So that'd be my number one. And then I love the nerdy stuff about what goes into the psychology with negotiation and every little social interaction. So Never Split the Difference by Chris Voss would be my other one.
Ah, good one. Okay.
Yeah.
Never split the difference. Okay. Great. Awesome. What I heard Joe struggling with was really finding ways of, as most people do, reaching their target audience through the various communication tools that we have available to us in this modern world of marketing. In Joe's instance, it's interesting to hear that because the end product is actually driven by patient outcome and the data that's collected is evidence that it does improve rehabilitation, not only from a scientific point of view, but in a human point of view, in the sense that it actually improves rehabilitation through building confidence and self-esteem and more positive reinforcement for the patient. I think it's just a matter of time. They've got a great product. I will definitely have Joe back. I would like to hear more about the arm that they are working on at the moment, and see how they're making out. Perfect example of a startup at a really critical point in reaching their business and growth goals. Thanks for listening, and stay tuned. More to come.